Part 1. The Hallway. I am walking down the long carpeted hallway of the manor, and the house is very still. It often gets like this on a rainy Saturday, this particular quality of stillness, as though the manor itself has taken a long, slow breath and decided not to exhale for a while. The clocks are ticking somewhere in some distant room, but even they seem to have slowed, become drowsy, as though they too have noticed the rain and drawn their curtains against it. There is nothing I need to do, nothing I need to remember. The afternoon is here, soft and grey, and entirely mine, and I am simply walking, quietly, slowly, toward the room that has been waiting for me. My footsteps make almost no sound at all. The carpet beneath my feet is thick, very thick, a deep, muted pattern of faded greens and old golds that has softened with decades of footsteps before mine. The pile gives gently with each step, absorbing sound the way good carpet always does, the way it always has in houses like this, where quietness is considered a kind of luxury. I feel the softness through the soles of my shoes, a gentle compression, a welcome. Each step is effortless. Each step carries me further from anything that required my attention. The hallway is long. On either side, the walls are panelled in pale painted wood, a soft, aged ivory, the colour of parchment left in afternoon light for many years. There are paintings hung at intervals, a landscape with a pewter sky, a still life of roses in a silver jug, a portrait of a woman in dark blue silk who gazes past me with an expression of perfect serenity, as though she already knew something I am only now beginning to understand. The light coming through the windows at the far end of the hallway is silver. Not white, not grey, silver. The particular luminous silver of a British afternoon in rain, when the clouds are low and full, and the world outside has softened into something watercolour and gentle. The windows are tall, their glass old enough to have a slight distortion, a wobble in the pane that makes the view beyond. The lawn, the yew hedge, the pale shapes of the formal garden appear to ripple ever so slightly, like a reflection in still water just beginning to settle. I pause for a moment at one of these windows. The rain is falling steadily outside. Not dramatically, there is no drama here, no storm, no sudden gusts, simply a heavy, reliable, rhythmic rain, the kind that has been falling since mid-morning and intends to go on falling well into the evening, unhurried and purposeful. I can hear it faintly through the old glass, a soft, continuous murmur, like the sound of distant applause at something very far away. The gravel path below the window has turned dark, and a small rivulet runs along the edge of the stone sill, shivering off into nothing. The ivy on the outer wall of the manor is soaked, and I can see it through the glass. Dense, dark green, trembling slightly with the weight of the rain, every leaf holding its small silver bead of water before releasing it to the next leaf below. It is beautiful in its grey and quiet way. I continue down the hallway. There is no hurry. There is simply the carpet beneath my feet, the soft press of each step, the silver light at the windows, and ahead of me, just there, at the end of this long corridor, the door to my room, standing slightly ajar. A thin, warm line of amber light falls through the gap and across the pale carpet like a brushstroke, and I move toward it as naturally as I move toward anything that promises warmth and rest. The brass handle is cool to the touch, and it turns with a soft, satisfying click. I push the door open. Part 2. The room. The room receives me. That is the only word for it, receives, as though it has been arranged precisely for this moment, this afternoon, this particular quality of grey light and quiet, as though every object in the room has been placed with my rest in mind. I pause for a moment just inside the doorway and let my eyes adjust. Let the room settle around me like a garment. It is a large room, larger than I remember somehow. Rooms always seem larger in the rain, as though the world contracting outside causes the interior to expand, to breathe more fully into its own dimensions. The ceiling is high, its plasterwork picked out in a soft ivory that has yellowed at the edges over the years into the warmest possible shade of cream. There is a cornice, delicate, restrained, a pattern of small leaves and scroll work that runs the perimeter of the ceiling and collects the shadows of the afternoon into its carved channels. The walls are a pale, chalky blue. Not assertive, nothing in this room is assertive, but a soft, receding blue, the colour of sea glass, or of a winter sky at the very edge of dusk before the darkness comes. In certain lights, in summer perhaps, these walls might read as almost white, but today, with the rain light falling silvery and low through the tall sash windows, the blue deepens slightly, becomes more present, more comforting, the colour of cool linen, of distance, of something almost underwater and entirely peaceful. Against this blue, the white of the bed linens glows, and the bed. It stands in the centre of the far wall, and it is enormous, a great four-poster of dark-aged mahogany, carved at each corner with the same leaf pattern as the cornice above, the wood polished to steep, honeyed lustre that seems to hold its own warmth independent of the light. The posts rise to the ceiling tester with quiet authority, hung with curtains of heavy ivory silk, pooled slightly on the floor, as though they were made for a ceiling 6 inches higher, or perhaps simply as an extravagance, because in rooms like this, extravagance of fabric is understood to be its own form of beauty. The bed has been made for me. The linen is crisp and white and immaculate, not the cold white of something institutional, but the warm, living white of cotton that has been laundered with care, pressed with a heavy iron, and then left to breathe. I can smell it from here, faintly. Lavender. Not the sharp, camphorated lavender of something synthetic, but the gentle, dried, botanical lavender that has been pressed into sachets and tucked between the folds of these sheets as they were stored in the linen press downstairs. A scent that is at once clean and warm and subtly soporific, as all lavender is, as it has been since people first understood what it was for. The top sheet is folded back precisely, a cuff of white over the edge of the coverlet, revealing the pillow arrangement within. 4 plump, deep pillows, each encased in the finest cotton, each carrying that same soft lavender breath, stacked in pairs against the headboard. They look, and I know in a moment that they will be, impossibly soft. The kind of soft that is almost structural, a softness with density to it, a weight, as though the feathers inside have arranged themselves into something specifically suited to the particular architecture of my weariness. And over everything, the coverlet. It is a matelassé coverlet, heavy and quilted, and the colour of winter cream, its surface worked in a raised pattern of interlocking diamonds that catch the light and give it a texture almost like sculpted cloth. I can see the weight of it in the way it drapes, not lightly, not airily, but with deliberate heaviness, the kind of heaviness that a body craves when it is tired and cool, and the afternoon has turned silver, and the rain is falling outside. It will be warm beneath that coverlet. I already know this. I can feel it from here. At the foot of the bed, folded in thirds, there is a second layer, a heavy wool throw the colour of pale slate, with a delicate fringe at each end, placed there for the precise eventuality of this afternoon, when the room is cool and the body asks for more. The room is cool. Not uncomfortably so. The manor is always temperate, even in autumn. But there is a freshness to the air that comes directly from the window, which is cracked open, just at the bottom of the nearest sash, by perhaps an inch, perhaps not even that, a finger's width of open air, a slim aperture, and through it comes the sound and the smell of the rain outside. Part 3. The window and the fire. I move closer to the window and let my eyes rest for a moment on the grey sweep of the lawn, the blurred dark outline of the cedar tree at the garden's edge, the silver stippling of rain across the stone terrace below. I am here simply to listen. The rain has a character, a texture of its own, distinct from other rains. It falls heavily onto the broad stone sill just beyond the glass, and the sound it makes there is a kind of soft percussion, not sharp, not loud, but steady and full-bodied, like the lowest note of something being played very gently, over and over. It hits the sill in a dense, continuous pattern, and there is a slight variation within the uniformity, the occasional heavier drop, the momentary gust that sends the rhythm sideways for a second before it resumes. But the overall effect is of something completely reliable, completely without urgency. It will rain like this for hours. There is something extraordinarily comforting about that sentence. It will rain like this for hours. The rain is not going anywhere. The afternoon is not going anywhere. The evening, dinner, dressing, the sound of the gong in the hall below is still hours away. I have given myself this afternoon entirely without condition or limitation, and the rain outside is simply the sound of that gift being honoured. I can smell the rain through the gap in the window. It is a complex smell, and it arrives in layers. First, the cool mineral smell of water on stone, ancient stone, the kind that has absorbed decades of weather and releases it back into the air as a kind of elemental perfume. Then, beneath that, the smell of damp earth from the garden, dark, rich, faintly sweet, in the way that wet soil always is, carrying something biological and good, the smell of things continuing to grow quietly in the rain. And behind both of these, the green smell of the ivy on the wall, soaked leaves and woody stems, and something slightly resinous, the smell of a plant that is thoroughly, contentedly, unhurriedly wet. The air that comes through the gap is cool on my face. I turn from the window. Behind me, across the room, and I notice it more now that I am looking, the fire in the hearth is in its final stages, the last of the afternoon's small fire, lit earlier and now ebbing toward embers. The grate holds the remnants of 2 or 3 small logs, reduced to glowing orange and deep crimson shapes, still radiating heat, but no longer producing flame, save for the occasional low, blue-edged flicker at the very base, where a piece of wood still holds a breath of gas and surrenders it quietly into light. The hearth is framed in pale marble, veined very faintly in the softest blue-grey, and the mantelpiece above it holds a small collection of things. A pair of blue and white porcelain candlesticks, unlit. A small carriage clock in a brass case, its face catching the ember light. A sprig of dried lavender in a narrow bud vase of deep cobalt glass, dusty and faded and sweetly, mutely fragrant. The smell of the dying fire is lovely. It is the smell of beeswax from the polish used on the grates around, worked in with a cloth every week until the iron gleams, and wood smoke, and something slightly resinous from the logs, and beneath it all the old smell of a fireplace that has held many hundreds of fires over many decades, a smell that is almost architectural, baked into the stone itself. It mingles with the lavender from the bed and the cool rain air from the window, and produces something that has no name, but that my body recognizes as simply right. And then I see it across the room, and I stop. Part 4. The gown. It is hanging on the tall mahogany wardrobe door just to the left of the dressing table, exactly where it was laid out earlier this morning by careful and practiced hands. My gown for this evening. I stand and look at it for a long moment, and there is something about the sight of it, hanging there so patiently in the grey afternoon light, so entirely itself, so ready, that makes the prospect of the evening both real and deliciously distant at once. It is there. It will be there when I wake. The evening will come in its own good time, and when it does, the gown will be waiting. But for now, I simply look at it. It is one of the most beautiful things I own. The silhouette is all softness and length, a high, gathered waist that falls into a full, long skirt of extraordinary weight and movement, the kind of skirt that shifts when you walk and settles around your feet like something liquid, something alive. The fabric is silk taffeta, a deep, rich shade somewhere between sapphire and midnight, with the particular quality of colour that silk alone possesses, a depth that changes with the light, that is blue in one moment and almost violet in the next, that carries the shine of water and the shadow of deep water simultaneously. In this grey, rainy afternoon light, the gown appears darker than it is, a lustrous, serious blue, holding its colour like a secret. And I know that later, by candlelight and lamplight, it will open up entirely, the silk catching every warm flicker and throwing it back as something richer and more molten, the way fine fabric transforms after dark. The bodice is fitted, structured very slightly with the faintest interior boning, nothing rigid, nothing constricting, simply enough to give the whole thing its shape, its authority. The neckline is low and curved and edged in the narrowest possible trim of ivory silk ribbon, barely a centimetre wide, and at the centre of this neckline where the ribbon meets and crosses, there is a single small detail, a pale blue silk rosette, no larger than a coin, with a tiny seed pearl at its centre. It is the kind of detail that no one will see until they are very close, and then they will see it and understand everything about the person who chose it. The sleeves are soft and short, just to the elbow, where they fall into a deep lace-edged cuff of ivory Honiton. The pattern of the lace so fine and intricate that it appears at a distance to be simply a softening of the air around the wrist. The skirt moves even now, gently, in some imperceptible current of warm room air. A faint, slow ripple through the heavy silk, as though the gown is breathing. Behind it, just visible at the shoulder, a long silk sash in the palest powder blue. Almost the colour of these walls, I notice now, almost the colour of the room itself, is folded over the hanger, ready to be tied in a wide, low bow at the back. This is my favourite part of it, the way it will hang when tied, the two long tails falling nearly to the hem, catching the light differently from the skirt, softer, more matte, drifting with every turn. On the dressing table beneath the gown, laid out in order, long white kid gloves, smoothed flat, a small evening reticule of beaded silk the colour of champagne, and a single strand of pearls in a velvet-lined box, already open, the pearls catching the grey light in that particular way that pearls always do, warmly and without ostentation, as though they have their own private relationship with light and do not need to advertise it. There is perfume on the dressing table too, a small crystal bottle with a stopper, a scent I know well, white flowers and sandalwood, and something powdery and warm underneath, the evening's signature. Later, I will sit at this table. I will pin my hair. I will fasten the pearls. I will step into the gown, the silk rising around me, cool and smooth at first, then warming quickly to skin temperature. And I will tie the pale blue sash myself, or have it tied, and I will stand in the full-length glass beside the wardrobe, and the evening will begin its slow, luminous approach. But all of that is hours away. The gown will wait for me, patient as all beautiful things are patient, hanging in the grey afternoon light, breathing its quiet breath of silk and cedar and possibility. And now, at last, I move toward the bed. Part 5. The bed. My fingers brush the matelassé coverlet as I reach the bedside. The texture of it is extraordinary. That raised, quilted surface beneath my fingertips has a slight resistance to it, a firmness in the pattern, and between the diamond shapes, the fabric dips into soft valleys that my fingertips find and explore without thinking. It is heavier than it looks, heavier than I expected, and when I press my hand flat against it, the warmth it has already accumulated from the room, from the afternoon, comes up to meet my palm. I fold the coverlet back carefully, folding it down toward the foot of the bed, and the lavender-scented sheet beneath is revealed in its full, immaculate whiteness. I sit on the edge of the bed. The mattress receives me, deep and yielding, but with a firmness beneath the softness, the kind of mattress that supports rather than swallows, that holds rather than envelops. I reach for the nearest pillow and press it gently between my hands, and the feathers inside shift and settle with the softest of sounds. A murmur of down and air accommodating the new pressure. I set it back and let it recover its shape, plumping gently, slowly, returning to its former perfect fullness. Outside, the rain continues. It has, if anything, deepened in these last few minutes, a slightly heavier rhythm now, more insistent on the stone sill, sending a correspondingly richer sound through the gap in the window. The room fills with it. Not intrusively, the sound stays at the far edges of awareness, where it belongs, but thoroughly, completely, as background sound that has become so constant it has ceased to be sound at all, and has become simply the texture of the afternoon. I lie down. The pillow receives my head with a softness that is almost an answer to a question I didn't know I'd asked. The sheet against my cheek is cool for a moment, a clean, lovely coolness, the coolness of well-pressed linen, and then it begins to warm gently, finding the temperature of my skin and adjusting itself accordingly, and within a minute or two it is simply perfect, neither cool nor warm, but in that precisely calibrated middle place where the body stops noticing the sheet at all and simply rests within it. I draw the coverlet up. It falls over me with a weight that is entirely satisfying, not oppressive, but definite, present, a gentle pressure distributed across the whole length of my body that says, with great authority and great tenderness, that I am here, and that here is exactly where I should be. The matelassé surface is against my chin now, its texture faintly perceptible, and the warmth beneath it is already beginning to build, the small warmth of my own body being reflected back to me, contained, preserved, amplified by the weight of all that quilted cream cotton above. The room is very quiet, or rather, the room holds its sounds in the most beautiful proportion, the low, continuous murmur of the rain, the occasional faint tick of the carriage clock on the mantel, the whisper of the dying fire, its last embers settling deeper into ash with the gentlest of sighs, the creak, once, of something in the house, a floorboard or a beam accommodating itself to the cool, damp air, perfectly normal, perfectly benign. Across the room, in the gathering grey light, I can just make out the shape of the gown on the wardrobe door, a dark silk shadow, patient, beautiful, waiting. I close my eyes. Part 6. The Sinking. This is the part that cannot be rushed. The transition from waking into sleep is its own country, with its own geography, and I am now at its edge, not asleep, but beginning the long, gradual movement toward it, the way a tide begins to turn, not in a moment, but over many minutes, the water slipping back so slowly that you cannot say when it changed, only that it has. My body is already beginning to let go. I notice it, gently and without effort, the way the weight of my limbs increases almost imperceptibly. My arms, resting beside me beneath the coverlet, have grown heavier in the last few minutes. Not uncomfortable, far from uncomfortable, simply more themselves, more present, more solidly at rest. My hands have uncurled, the fingers slightly apart, and they lie open on the sheet beneath the coverlet like flowers that have decided to close for the night, except that here the closing is into a warmth and a softness rather than a darkness. My shoulders have lowered. I may not have noticed that they were raised at all, but now, in the shelter of the pillow, in the warmth of the coverlet, in the sound of the steady rain, they have descended fractionally but completely into the mattress, and the muscles there have released whatever they were holding, have simply chosen to let it go, because there is nothing here that requires holding. The afternoon holds itself, the rain holds itself, the fire holds its last embers. Everything is held. The rain is very soothing now. It has been the constant throughout, since the moment I stepped into the hallway, since the first silver light through the tall windows, since the smell of damp stone and wet ivy through the cracked window. The rain has been there, and it is there still, a sound that is at once utterly ordinary and utterly mysteriously consoling. Heavy British rain on old stone, on lavender-scented beds, on ivy-covered manor walls. A sound that has been present in this landscape for centuries before I arrived, and will persist long after this particular afternoon has become a memory. I am simply resting within it. The lavender is very present now that my eyes are closed. It rises from the pillow around me, from the sheet against my cheek, from the pillowcase beneath my head, in slow, warm waves, not sharp or intrusive, but continuous and gentle, the way scent moves through a warm room when there is no window open to disturb it. There is something almost narcotic about lavender, something that the body responds to below the level of thought, some ancestral memory of this scent meaning safety and stillness and rest. My breathing has slowed without my having to think about it. Each breath carries a trace of lavender in and carries nothing in particular out. The fire makes a small sound. A settling, a shifting of embers, almost a sigh, and then silence, and then the rain again, as reliable as before. The warmth from the hearth is not the strong warmth of a burning fire, but the residual warmth of one that has burned well, and is now quietly concluding its afternoon, and this residual warmth spreads across the floor and the lower part of the room in a gentle, diffuse way, more like the memory of heat than heat itself. But beneath the matelassé coverlet, I am definitively, thoroughly, entirely warm. The gap in the window allows the cool air in, just barely, just enough, and the two things meet in the room, the warmth from the embers and the coverlet, the coolness from the rain outside, and they find their equilibrium somewhere in the air above me, somewhere between the ceiling and the pillow, somewhere in the middle distance that I am no longer required to attend to. I am drifting now, not falling. The word falling implies speed, urgency, a destination arrived at too quickly, but drifting, the way a very small boat drifts from a dock on the most imperceptible of currents, moving so slowly that for a long time it is impossible to say whether it is moving at all, until suddenly, without any moment of transition, I notice that the dock is further away than it was, and the open water is all around me, and it is not frightening in the least, because the water is very still, and the light is silver, and the rain falls equally on the dock, and on the boat, and on the open water, making its soft, continuous sound across all of it without preference or distinction. The dinner chimes will not sound for hours. This thought arrives gently, not as a reminder, but as a gift. The evening, the dressing table with its silver-backed brushes, the scent of perfume in the crystal bottle, the gown of deep blue silk lifting from the hanger and settling around me in the lamplight, the conversation, the clink of crystal, the particular pleasure of a formal dinner at the end of a rainy day. All of that is waiting, patient and unhurried, somewhere in the future of this afternoon. It will arrive in its own time, as all good things do. The gong in the great hall below will sound in its own good hour, and when it does, I will rise, clear-headed and warm and rested, and begin the pleasant ritual of the evening. But that is later, much, much later. Right now, there is only this, the pillow, the coverlet, the sound of the rain. Part 7. Deep in the afternoon. I am very nearly there now. The thoughts that cross my mind, if they can be called thoughts anymore, having lost most of their structure and insistence, are the thoughts of the almost sleeping, brief, imagistic, arriving without logic and departing without conclusion, more like illustrations in a book being turned through gently than like anything that requires engagement. The pale blue walls, the blue silk sash, the sound of something, not the rain, something else, something from another time, and then the rain again, closer, more present, washing everything back to this room, this pillow, this afternoon. The weight of the coverlet is very good. I can no longer feel the individual textured diamonds of the matelassé beneath my fingertips. My hands have relaxed past the point of noticing texture, past the point of noticing much of anything, and the coverlet has simply become warmth and weight and presence, a familiar pressure, like a hand resting gently on a shoulder. The room smells of everything it should smell of. Beeswax from the furniture, lovingly worked into every surface once a week with a soft cloth until it gleams. A smell that is warm and slightly waxy and utterly domestic in the best possible sense. The smell of care taken and traditions maintained. Wood smoke from the dying fire, ancient and comforting and slightly sweet. Damp earth and rain and ivy from the cracked window. The smell of the world beyond the glass, present but safely outside, weather observed rather than weather endured. And underlying everything, returning always, the lavender of the sheets, botanical, calm, gentle as a hand smoothing hair from a forehead. I breathe it in. There is nothing else I need to do. The afternoon is holding me. The house is holding the afternoon. The rain is holding the house in a kind of continuous, encompassing embrace, falling on the roof tiles, on the stone sills, on the formal garden below, on the great cedar tree, on the country lane beyond the gates. A vast, impersonal, entirely beautiful act of natural generosity. This heavy rain falling on everything equally and asking nothing in return. My eyes, beneath their closed lids, have grown still. The faint restlessness that sometimes persists, even when the body is at rest, the slight movement, the occasional flicker beneath the lid, has quieted now, and there is only a warm, complete darkness behind my eyes, neither blank nor empty, but full in the way that a room with its curtains drawn is full, with presence, with warmth, with the sense of everything necessary already being here. The rain continues. It will continue for many hours. It will be raining when I wake, the afternoon having deepened around me while I slept, the light outside now leaning toward the particular bronze of a rainy evening rather than the silver of a rainy afternoon. The world will be softer and darker and more golden lamped when I open my eyes, and I will lie for a moment, as one always does, in a bed this comfortable, in a room this beautiful, simply taking stock of myself, aware of the pleasant heaviness of a body that has rested completely, and then I will hear the distant sound of the house beginning to stir. And across the room, waiting patiently in the lamplight, the gown will still be there, darker now, richer, more itself in the evening light, its silk catching every warm flicker. But I cannot think about that yet. Right now I can hear only the rain, falling heavy and soft and steady on the old stone of the manor, on the dark wet ivy, on the great lawns stretching away to the hedgerow in the grey afternoon light. And the rain says, rest. The rain says, there is nothing else. The rain says, I am warm and I am safe, and the afternoon is long, and the evening is not yet, and the house is still, and the pillow is soft, and the lavender is all around me, and the coverlet is heavy, and the gown is waiting, and everything is perfectly, entirely, magnificently all right. Sleep now. Sleep. The fire breathes its last breath of warmth into the room and settles. The rain falls on the stone sill and falls and falls. The clock on the mantel ticks very softly, each tick a little slower than the last, or so it seems, as the afternoon deepens around it. The lavender rises from the pillow, warm and sweet and barely there. The coverlet holds me. The house is still. The afternoon has me entirely now. There is no part of me that needs to remain awake for any reason. The house knows I am here. The rain is keeping watch. The room is warm. The pillow is where my head has always been. The lavender, the rain, the warmth of the coverlet, the weight of it across my whole self. The matelassé diamonds soft now, softened now, not texture anymore, but simply warmth and weight, and the pale cream of everything above me, cream against the light blue of the walls, those blue walls, pale as sea glass, pale as the sky in winter just before the light goes, and the rain, and the fire, just embers now, just warmth, and the rain on the stone, and the ivy dark and wet and trembling, and somewhere in the room the gown, its silk breathing quietly in the dark, deep blue and patient, waiting for evening as I wait for sleep, both of us resting, both of us ready. And the dinner chimes, still hours away, still so very far away. No need to think of them. They will come in their own good time. Everything comes in its own good time. And my own good time is this, is now, is the pillow and the lavender and the coverlet and the long slow rhythm of the rain. Rest now. Rest. The afternoon holds me. The manor holds the afternoon. The rain holds everything, and I am safe, and I am warm, and I am held, and the evening will come when it comes, and until it comes, there is nothing, nothing, nothing at all. but the rain and the warmth and the long, deep quiet of a Saturday afternoon in a house that has always known how to hold its guests gently. Sleep, sleep,